Warm greetings, everyone. On behalf of Friday Waters, an initiative of the W4W Foundation, a think tank built as Citizens Collective, we welcome you to another session of Friday Water Arts. Friday Waters is a continuation of signature series Wednesdays for Water at W4W Foundation. The activities initiated as a series for Friday Waters include Water Talkies, Water Reading Club, Water Thesis Club, Water Arts, and Meet a Maestro. Each of these sessions take place once a month, depending on the availability of our speakers. The idea of Friday Waters is to bring water knowledge available in the various alternate forms at one place to highlight the opportunities and challenges related to water. The idea is also to increase the outreach of the alternate water practices in the water networks, as well as in the society at large. The Friday Water sessions are designed to be fun-filled and yet fruitful to learn about the water matters. Do keep following www.w4w.in for more detail for regular updates. As at W4W, we strongly believe that water conversations in whatever possible way is the only way to move towards water conservation. My name is Mansee Bhargava, and I'm the host from W4W today. And today's water art session is on water tales, comics and storytelling. We are with Shreya Khandekar of WforW, and to be honest, one of my favorite group in the country. Before I invite Shreya to share her ideas, thoughts, and works on this unique artwork, it is my honor also to introduce her briefly. Shreya Khandekar is a partner at WforW, a unique platform that blends architecture, urban design, and storytelling through comics. With a deep passion for visual narratives, she uses humor and creativity to communicate complex ideas, making architecture and cities more relatable to the public. Her work often highlights inclusivity, role of gender in the cities, alternate practices, cultural nuances, making her integral part of WforW's journey in reimagining architectural discourse. Now, I would like to add here why I was so fascinated with the work of WforW. They have also contributed with exemplary work in the water sector with their beautiful artwork. And this is where I was picking some of their artwork to actually do my education on water because it's very communicative and very direct, very easy for a lay person and for especially for students to understand what we want to convey, which many words are often difficult for younger generation or even children to understand what we want to convey. So in that sense, alternative water education has a very important place if we want to really move towards water conservation and water conservation besides managing it by people. So who are these people who can do that? I mean, of course, we often think of scientists, we often think of scholars, academicians, and politicians, decision makers. But we also have a range of water artists who have been really dedicating their life. And as you know, in even Friday Water Arts, we are almost inching towards 100 sessions. So we have already touched so many artists, and we would like to touch more through these wonderful artists because they help us reach out to more. So with these words, I would like to first of all thank Shreya and her team to really make out time for us. We have planned this session for more than 2 months ago. Super excited. One of your fans, so you know you are meeting one of your fans today. I would like to start with a very simple question to you, Shreya, because not many people from architecture planning and urban design takes this route. We had Nikhil Chaudhary before. So
Yes.
how did this come out into your team and what went on before you really thought that this is the way to get into the profession because it's a unique way to get into the profession. Over to you and thank you so much for taking our time at the end of this year. This is also our last session of this year. Thank you. Over to you.
Oh, okay. First of all, thank you so much, Mansee. I mean, thank you for your kind words. And I mean, for us also, it's great to, great note to end our year with. I mean, this is also one of our last talks or events, so to speak, before we end this year. So I think thanks for that too. And actually great that you, sort of name Nikhil because Nikhil has been one of the inspirations for Anuj as well,
Okay.
who started. So, we need to thank him as well. And I think when I met Anuj, who had already been practicing this for quite a few years in 2018, both of our questions or ideas were very similar that, is there a more simpler way to communicate, architecture, cities, this love, because both of us, we are trained as architects. He's also trained as an urban designer. So, and we love talking about cities. So is there a way that we can do it in a very simple way? Because for us also, as students, that was a problem that we were facing, that sometimes we couldn't understand the kind of language that professors use, or even academicians or practicing people use. So that was I think the idea, that we wanted to talk about the built environment in a simple way, and that's where the Leewardist is. Yeah. Yeah.
And I'm quite curious about the name itself because, when I was using your comic strips and a lot of animations, I would always, get intrigued. Very different name. Would you elaborate on this? How did this take birth?
Yeah. It's part of the PPT, the story, and
Okay, go ahead then. Go ahead. Huh.
think it would have been great if Anuj also would have been in the session
Yes.
to tell the story. Actually, a name that was given by a friend of Anuj, and
Mhm.
she said that it's like the architects, designers, people who sort of design our everyday world. We are so important to the society, but yet sometimes a story are not told to the people, or people don't know who we are.
Yes.
And similar to how the leeward side of the hill is. So, a hill has two sides. So this is your geography lessons from, 8th standard, 9th standard, where the hill has two sides: the windward side, which is the good side. It has trees, it has wind, it has rain. um, and everybody likes to look at the windward side, but the leeward side nobody looks at, but it's equally important to make a hill. So it's like, us as designers and
Wow.
planners, we live on the other side of the hill. And so we are the ones who are telling the stories. And yeah, I mean, now it's registered as a company, so we don't have a choice but to use that name.
No, but it has a deep or profound meaning, as you just mentioned. You can't make a hill without the leeward side, and only windward side is the one which is discussed. Thank you so
Right.
much, and I think the floor is open for you to have your presentation, and then we will open it up for Q&A. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you so much. So I'll just share my screen, and it's visible,
Yes, it
the
is
screen.
visible. Go ahead.
Okay. All right. So, I mean, Mansi, you can also keep me on a time check, because we have,
Sure.
I think, 35 minutes. So I'll
Yes.
try to finish on time. And yeah, so we are levered is, it's important to have both the photos, because Anuj, in fact, a lot of comics that I'll be showing today are comics that have been made by Anuj in the early stages of Leewardis, which were shared as blogs. And I think that they're wonderful comics. They're not as sort of visible as the comics that we have now, because of course we have a larger following now. So I think it's great that I get to represent those comics as well. um yeah. So I mean, like I said, that mostly we are known for this collage of comics that I have here, and it's mostly on the life of an architect, or the practice of architecture, or the culture of architecture. And of course, I mean, these comics are popular because these ideas are something that were not talked about in this manner. So of course, people liked it and shared it, and this is something that we've been known for on the internet. But we like to think that as architects who talk about architecture, we also talk about the built and the unbuilt side of our built environment. And this includes everything. This includes climate change. This includes sustainability. This includes the idea of how cities are designed, and of course water, because it's such an important part, and it's literally everywhere. And we use it for different reasons. I mean, it seems like a rhetoric thing to say, but we do use it for literally everything. And there are ways that we've been using it. We've been using it in traditional ways, and we've been using it in modern ways, although this looks much uglier and, also wastes a lot of water. We also have a comic on this later in the PPT. But the same resource that's so so obvious in our daily lives is facing so many issues. It's facing pollution, it's facing encroachment for views or for whatnot. It's been facing a lot of maintenance issues, and the most important issue that we think is the lack of awareness. Is that people don't know that it's facing all of these problems. We don't know, sitting in our homes, that it there are a lot of issues that we have to tackle with. And we think that if we can tackle this, the lack of awareness within people, we can take care of all of these issues as well. I mean, of course, it'll be slow, and it'll be, it'll take a lot of time, as all the other issues in the world do, but we can work on it. And to do that, we have to identify who are the stakeholders, or who are the people that we need to, make aware. So are they the government? Is it a corporate firm, or is it just the common masses like you and me? Or if there are any other specific examples, like, somebody who wants to educate about a specific topic, or somebody wants to understand a certain app or a certain website, or if there's a government official who wants to create awareness about water, there's an organization who's trying to educate about water and climate change, or just a city resident who wants to know more about the water resources. But sometimes what happens in the name of, spreading awareness or dissemination of certain information, is that people think of the easiest idea, which is making a poster. Nothing wrong with it, nothing wrong with making a poster, but sometimes it is not enough. The idea of communication sometimes has to be rethought of. It has to be innovative so that it can be popular. These ideas about, sometimes they are limited to, okay, it'll be talked about in a documentary or an art film. But why can't these ideas be made popular? Why can't it be something which is, say, for example, a film, a film that we go and watch in the theaters, or a comic book which becomes really popular, or is a certain workshop, or involves common people as well, to actually make an impact. So, like I said, I discussed this already, that leeward is we uh the leeward side of the hill, which is the least looked side of the hill, is where all these issues lie, but they're equally important, and we need to talk about them. So we thought, these ideas that have made the life of an architect popular on our page, why don't we also use it to talk about all of these issues? So when we actually first started addressing them, interestingly, water was one of the first topics that we discussed. And we were just talking about very simple, very daily life activities that we do. So one of the first, I mean, this is actually not a comic, it's like a blog sort of a thing, which was, popular in the early 2000s. It's called Water Wastage, and how guests in India specifically, how they waste water, not, of course, not consciously, but it just happens. So it's an interesting blog, and it involves a lot of calculations as well. So our culture, India country as a culture, as as people, we are very diverse, and we have a lot of traditions. We have a lot of etiquettes. You know, touching feet, respecting elders, and helping them, and offering water to guests. Of course, it's very important. And we have lots of guests. We have the unwanted people, we have people who we want, we have our friends, we have neighbors who just come for a chai, and we have also, now we have, people who deliver us our groceries and food, etc. So on an average, an Indian family can host up to 50 guests. Now, this is a calculation that's done in like 2017, so I guess it has changed. But that time, we found out that a modern Indian family will host up to 50 guests in a month, and a certain amount of water is served to each of these guests. Now, let's look at the amount of the water. So one tumbler, one, steel, one glass of water is up to 250 ml, you know. And now these different guests will have different type of water drinking habits. The worst guest is this, who just sips the glass and keeps it. And of course, we can't use that water now, right? So then there's other person who drinks, half full, half empty. Then there's the third person who will just waste the last bit of it. And this is the best guest who will finish the entire glass. Uh, but if we average it out, these drinking habit, it averages out to about 40% of wastage of water, which is up to 100 ml. But the calculation doesn't end here. So if one modern family, let's say, hosts 50 guests per month, and if those 50 guests are, wasting up to 100 ml of water, then that comes about to 5 liter for one family. But if we take the urban population, of India, then we have like these many people. This is what, 100 million households. And so the total amount of water that we waste is this number into 5 liters, which is, this big number. I mean, I'm bad at math, so I'm not going to read it, but it's a big number. It seems like a big number. And that water is enough to fill 1/5 of the Hoover Dam, right? And that's an annual loss of, if we multiply that number by 12 months, that's six with a lot of digits. And so the idea is that, if you just, waste a little bit less water because of this tradition that we've been following, every family, every locality, every city, and every state can save a lot of water, you know. So next time you can just be a responsible host. You can ask how much water do you want if you need water, and you can be a responsible guest. Just half a glass, or if you get the full glass, then you can just drink the whole glass of water. The next comic is on story of a household water purifier. Again, it's a very old comic now. I mean, I'm sure that a lot of people who have ROs at home, I mean, this is back when ROs were a rage and everybody was switching from an aquaguard to an RO because it's more it's safer. But even though it takes out all the minerals, I mean, I don't know. I don't know. I'm not going to get into this, but back when ROs were the rage and people didn't know, there was just a pipe that throws out a lot of water, and we would just let it, go in the sink. So the purifier, the RO works in a way where it purifies 10% of water, and to purify that 10%, it wastes up to 90% of water. That's almost about 12 liters. If one people, like a family of 4 people, we need 12 liters. Then to purify 12 liters, we waste up to 108 liters of water. And that can fill, I mean, that in a year, it can fill up to 40 water tanks, because that's about 39, almost 40,000 liters that can fill up to 40 water tanks, overhead water tanks. And that same amount can be used to water your plants. It can be used to wash your cars. It can be used to wash your utensils, even yourself. You can take a bath with that water. You can wash your clothes. So, this comic back then, it got popular because people were not aware of the idea that you can use that water, that water is just going down the drain. And when we have so many such a huge population in our rural India where they don't even get access to water, right? Then we also have like small, very quick cartoons, because like Mansee, you also said that sometimes you just need a very quick image to grasp something or understand something. And when that is reached, when you're aware about it, then you start questioning that, oh yes, it's happening around me, it's happening in my city, and I need to, I cannot be just very oblivious about it. So this comic we made um when we had flash floods in Pune and Chennai, where there is this um, unimaginable amount of development that is happening, and in that we are you know uh, we are destroying our bodies, our storm water channels, etc. And we forget about nature, but then it comes back to us, in form of this. This is the image of Pune, and where the river actually swelled up, because we actually did not allow it to go anywhere else. So of course, when it rains so heavily, it floods, and there are flash floods that happen in the city, and it comes to a halt. So again, this I think this cartoon is one of my favorites. It's about rainwater harvesting, but आगे से बचना नहीं बचाना है. So the idea of that, you can save water, at your own level, at your household level. Even if you're a public institute, etc., you can work on these systems where you can actually save every bit of water that comes to us. This cartoon is also actually one of my favorites because it talks about how sometimes media, which is supposed to play a role of talking about all of these issues and talking about how communities, how areas are affected. For example, Assam. This is the comic that we did for Assam floods, where the news channels, they're covering everything else but not the issue, right? And there are communities which are affected by it. This is about the our obsession in the cities with neat lawns, which I think now, I mean, I see a lot of these reels on Instagram where people are talking about how the idea of lawns now should be finished, and you should be planting more sort of local grasses or weeds, etc., so that you don't require so much of water to maintain that lawn. So actually, this is I think a quote by somebody, that we can't eat the lawn. So then somebody's asking, the kid is asking, why are we growing it? Because it doesn't make sense. It's just an aesthetic idea that we are obsessed with, in mostly in cities. Um, this cartoon is actually a very old cartoon that Anuj did, and this image is a very recent image. And that's how we thought, that a cartoon that he made, and it makes sense now. I'll talk about it. So the cartoon says that better enjoy this water body now before someone comes and pollutes it, wastes it, limits access to it, and sells it for $2 a bottle, and then calls it development or progress. So this is a beautiful lake. It's in Maharashtra. I will not name that lake because it's a protected lake by the village, and they actually don't allow a lot of tourists to come. We could go there because we were in the village and we knew some people, and that's where we were allowed to even go near it, because it's a huge lake, and the villagers, the people in the village take complete responsibility of maintaining it, of cleaning it every week, of the cleaning, in fact, even the lake and the edges, etc. And in fact, just 2 years before, or I think a year before, a soft drink, a big soft drink company, they'd come and they said that, sell this lake to us so that we can use the water for the production of our soft drink. And the villagers asked, okay, fine, all right, even if we do that, will you promise us jobs, or will you promise us something? They said, yeah, we'll give you jobs, but not generational jobs, just people that we can hire right now. That's it. And the villagers, they said no. They said that we cannot sell this to you. And in fact, that soft drink company has now gone and purchased another lake. They've, of course, destroying another lake, but this, they did not sell it to the soft drink company, because they said that, this is literally our child, because we've been growing it and we've been maintaining it for so many years. They, in fact, um do they also don't fish after a point. So there are rules that they have within the community about how much they can actually fish, so that the flora and the fauna is maintained in that built environment. So these traditional knowledge systems that we also go and destroy, right, after at a point of time. Then this comic is part of our case comics that we do, where we sort of take a case study and we try to explain it. This is it's called Kinderdijk, in and it's in South Holland, I mean, it's close to Rotterdam. You can take a ferry from Rotterdam and reach the site. It's a UNESCO World Heritage Site. And it's very interesting. I mean, from just the image of it, it seems, that it's a couple of windmills and houses. Okay, very nice, very picturesque. But it actually serves a very, very interesting purpose. So the the Netherlands, the entire nation of Netherlands is it's thickly veined with lot of these canals and beautiful canals that we see in Amsterdam and everywhere else, and all these water bodies. But it also happens to be 5 meters below sea level. Now, Bombay, we are at sea level. Pune, we are 5,000 meters above sea level. This is below 5 meters below sea level, which means, I mean, technically, it means that it should be underwater, right? So, what did they do? What did they do um, to tackle the unique problems that they face? So, they face a lot of high tides. So, they built a wall, which they call dike. And it rains throughout. It can rain anytime. There's also a lot of huge velocities of wind. And in fact, it was so difficult that the Romans also did not, couldn't conquer them at that point of time. So what did they do about it? Did they, scoop buckets of water, or did they live underwater? Uh, so what they did was they actually used the very forces of nature that was against them, the wind and the water. So they combined it and came up with this idea of windmill, where they built a wall, and there's the water which is inside, and they dug these trenches. The windmills were placed strategically so that when the wind comes, the windmills, they start their work and they start to move, and they pump the water out of the settlement, right, into the sea. So the sea is 5 meters above, and the windmills will pull the water out. And this process helps them. One second. Oh, yeah, there was somebody, I've admitted them to the talk.
Oh, no.
Uh, yeah. Uh, so this process helps the water to actually be thrown out of the settlement, but at the same time, it allows the water to be channelized, and it's not stopped, because that's what we know. When it's stopped, the water will flood, and it'll actually be a problem. So they actually use the forces that were against them, and they used it to channelize the water beautifully. And of course, now it's a beautiful site where you can also go and you can cycle and you can visit all these windmills. In fact, those windmills are habitable. People live in it, and they have flour mills. They have different kind of. They have kitchens. They have rooms inside those windmills, and then they also use. They, like, back when they were working, they also use it for communication between each of them. Um, and so the idea is that the world keeps changing, but the forces of the nature are the same, right? So we should use it in our favor, but at the same time we should be respectful of those forces and their existence. This is another case study comic that we did in collaboration with Rahul Mehrotra Architects and Mohan Rao sir, Indie Design from Bangalore, who's the landscape architect of this particular project. Why am I showing this particular comic? Because water is an essential part of it. Why? Because the user that this project is for. So the user here is not a human being. It's actually an elephant. That's why the Hatigaon, which literally translates to an elephant village. So the elephant, actually, their habitat, and they need water. They're a tropical climate being. So the story starts with the architect and their professor visiting the Hatigaon. So this is the Amer Fort, and they visit the fort, and the student asks, what's so special about this fort? And the professor says, okay, first let's take an elephant ride, and then I'll talk to you about this. So the professor asks, can you identify the different users that you can see? So the student says, yes, I can identify the tourists. I can identify people who are maintaining the fort. I can identify the Mahat. And then he says, and so the professor says, what about the elephant? Doesn't it need a home? So then the student says, yes, but the forests are their home, right? So then the professor says, right, then that means that this arid place cannot be their home. The elephant actually belongs to the tropics, and they have been brought here by the Mughals back when they were ruling. And they don't actually belong here now, but they've stayed here because of the tourism and the huge tourism industry that there is in Jaipur. And so then they take the elephant ride, and then they reach the Hathi which is close to the Amir fort. And the student sees the village, and he says that why are there so less buildings? Because when you see a project, when you see an architectural project, you want to see a lot of buildings, you want to see a lot of built. But then the professor says, yeah, but why do we need buildings? Because we have to understand the user before that. So the elephant, of course, it needs a lot of space. It needs about 35 hectares of land. So the government provided that. And they also need 550 liters of water every day. And so the site actually is in an abandoned quarry, where the contours of the quarry also allowed the landscape architects to revive it in a certain way that it could be connected, and the water could be stored, and they could be used by the elephants. And we met Mohan Rao sir in Bangalore to discuss this, and he said that the project, this kind of a project, was so slow because it took so many years, because it's not just water, right? It's also reviving the landscape around that area, and also building that landscape for the elephant. So there were a lot of things that were done, that were pre-dams constructed to control the flow of water. Water swales were created to purify it, because it was also a quarry before. Um, and there were a lot of reservoirs that were created for the elephant, because that is one of the rituals for the Mawat and the elephant. And the landscape was also dealt with carefully. The vegetation, like I said, the vegetation had to be designed to mimic the environment of a tropical climate. And now when he sees this, when he understands the user, the student says that, okay, now I understand why the build is so minimal. Because if you look at, I mean, just this one housing typology, it has one big room, which is the elephant's room, and the roof of it, which is covered by thatch. So it's covered by thatch, so it also keeps it cool. And then there's a courtyard, and then these three rooms are the room for Mahot and their family. And so this is one cluster. So one cluster has three houses, and then it's repeated everywhere. And so, like I said, the thatch also keeps it cool for the elephant. And now people can also go and visit the housing, the Hatigaon, which is there, which also creates revenue for them. But then the student has one last question. He asks, what is in it for us? Because we are so selfish, sometimes we cannot look beyond us. And then he says that, what is in it, is in it for us? Um, Everything is for the elephants. It's for him, and he's not a human being. So then how are we benefited? So the professor says that it's a good question, but then you see, when you design for nature, you understand it better. And when you understand nature better, it indirectly affects us. It affects us humans. So it ends with this, very important ritual, which is between the mouth and the elephant, where the mouth, very generously and very lovingly bathes the elephant. And so when we understand this relationship, and when we understand that nature provides us with this, we understand how important it is to design other than for human beings, right? So this I think was a very interesting case study that we did. And also because we are used to uh, talking about projects that are designed by architects, for, I mean, we think that most of the projects are designed for architects. Uh, I mean, they're designed by architects for architects so that, everybody can praise each other. But I mean, it's mostly designed for people, it's never that we are able to look beyond the idea of a user, beyond a human being. So that's why we thought, we'll also showcase this example. Yes, so we also use the same communication tool to write longer
The
stories.
stories.
Uh,
Uh,
this
this
is,
is
I'm having an audio issue. Are you
Oh,
able to
you are
hear?
audible. Yes, yes, we
Ah,
are hearing you
okay.
very clear.
I was listening to my own audio. Okay, yeah. So this is a book that we did with Living Waters Museum with Sarah Ahmed ma'am, and it was a project initiated by architect Ritu Deshmukh. And this was during the pandemic, and it was very interesting because at that time, we also wanted to sort of do something which was research based, and something out of what we've been doing was, talking about architecture. So we also wanted to do something different, and ma'am came up with this idea that why don't we talk about the traditional systems of Navi Mumbai, which is a satellite city designed for for migrants and so many people coming to Bombay. And what was Navi Mumbai actually before it became this huge satellite city, you know? So I mean, it's a 50-page book, but then I'll just sort of summarize it for everybody. So it's a story that starts from, so there are these protagonists who go to a restaurant in Navi Mumbai, and then they eat a fish thali, and they understand that food comes from somewhere, right? That fish on your plate is sourced from somewhere. So then from there they go to, this is images of Diwali Gaon, which is in Navi Mumbai, and they go there with the restaurant owner. So they go with him to understand where the food actually comes from, and then they see all kinds of variety of fish. And then when they go deep within it, they also understand that there are a lot of communities and lot of, now they are urban villages, because these are communities now which are engulfed by the rest of the city, but these communities still live and they still exist in the city. And their relationship with water is defined by what kind of occupation they do. So there's a Koli community which is the fishing community, and the Agri community who works with agriculture, and they have their own systems and their own relationship and their own traditions with water. So this is just one of the sections that we had put from from a housing area of somebody who's from an agri community, where this is the creek, all right, and the creek during the low tide is like this. During the high tide, it of course rises, and there are these natural dikes or dams that they build. Next to the dike they have salt pans. So, and it's very interesting and it's very intelligent if you see, because if there is a high tide, it directly, their housing settlement is not directly next to the creek, which is what we are doing now for views and for whatnot. And they actually have salt pans, so when there is low tide they can actually work on salt pans, and then they have their paddy fields, and then they have their settlements. So they're already very intelligent, and they already know how to, and they've been living with water for so long, for generations, and then they know how to deal with it. But then of course, with development, these relationships are also broken, and when these relationships are broken, that is when abandonment, no maintenance, pollution of water, that is when that happens. And we as a people who, okay, we have to migrate, we have to go to these cities, we have to understand how we can take care of them. So there are a lot of people who also have, they formed groups who come together, and then they protest, and they also work for protecting these environments. Because the story ends in a way where they understand that it is only when you can take care of these spaces that you can enjoy views like this. So this is from the flamingo. It's, I think, in the Nerul area, where you can actually view this very beautiful sight of flamingos, the flamingo dance, and them coming and habitating there. So in fact, there was this couple, I forgot their name. It's mentioned in the book, where uh, they come and they fight for that area, because I think there was a golf course which was proposed in that area, where now, I mean, because they protested, and because they they actually use their voice, now we can all see this beautiful sort of view of nature. um, then this particular project is in collaboration with a lot of people, but it's with an Indo-French workshop that architect Ritu Deshmukh. So a lot of, actually, yeah. So thanks to her also, that we've been understanding so much about water, and we are doing these projects where we're able to talk about it. So this was in Kolkata, I think in 2019, part of an Indo-French workshop where students were understanding uh, different occupations that were once related with the river, and how it changed over time. So this is, I mean, it's just an abstraction, but the idea is that there's a river and there's a road which are parallel to each other, and there are 8 lanes with 8 different occupations. So quickly, I'll just show one particular occupation, which still, I mean, so of course there are a lot of occupations which have lost their connection with water, but there are some occupations which still have a connection in a way. So Kumartoli, which is also a UNESCO site, it still has a relationship with water, in the sense that they still gather the clay from the banks of the river. And in fact, they also send bamboo from the other side of the bank. So the bamboo actually travels in the water, and it also seasons in the way, and then they use that bamboo for the structure of the of the statue. And so, yeah, this is a short comic that we did there, over there on site. And this is one of the housing typologies of where the artisans, they use the bottom part of the warehouse to make these statues, and then they use the upper part to live. uh this next comic that we did was in Dhaka. It's about movement, but it's also about water. I'll tell you how. So, I mean, when we went to Dhaka to study it, the first thing that you notice is how people move, because it's so evident. And of course, it's also so similar in a lot of ways with India. But you see that there is everything is about movement. You have to plan everything. Even when we were going on site, we had to plan that, okay, we have to leave at this time, otherwise we won't ever reach there. And when we were having these discussions with professors at Boeth Institute over there, we so this whole comic, it's a 20-page book. It talks about how, what are the different ways people use to move now, but what were the ways that people used before? So lot of these canals, so, Dholai Khal, which also was part of our study, we saw it as well. It was actually once used to, it was an operational canal, and it was used to, for transportation, for movement of goods. So it was mainly water that was a mode of transport. But now, a lot of these canals, they're facing a lot of pollution, or they've had constructions on top of it. So this is a very interesting image, because this is actually the site where we worked. So this is an entire site, and every day we had to, from this point, we had to go till here, till Farashganj. So from Bada Katra to Farashganj. And there are two ways that you can go. You can three, actually. So you can either walk, which is also a good way because you can reach faster, or you can take an auto and that auto will, decide where to go from, or you can take a boat, which is scenic, which is beautiful. You see both sides of the ghat, the edge of the river, and you can actually reach much, much faster in that way. So, in like towards the end of the book, we talk about, imagine if it the city could be planned in a way where, all these water systems and all these systems that were there, that existed before, could be, revived. Of course, of course, we have to have roads and cars and all of that, but there could be a way, we can imagine a way where all of these systems can be revived, right? And so yeah, that's how it is also related with water. And these are some of the storyboards that we did. So it's also nice to show a little bit of process that we have. The next year, so this 2024, yeah. So we went there again, and this time we talked about the opposite. So we talked about the first year we talked about movement and chaos, and this year we said, we'll talk about peace. So, finding peace in all of those chaos. And it was very interesting because we realized that, if you can see this image, right? It's so dense, but there is one large open public space, which is this lake in middle of the old city. And it's very interesting. It's absolutely pedestrian because the vehicles can't reach there. So it's automatically much calmer. People sit and enjoy over there, and they can just, relax. So we talk about these ideas of public spaces and areas where you can actually find peace in such a chaotic place. And it's um it was important to talk about this particular lake because it is one of the only lakes that have, that's still surviving because of the community, because they take care of it. And in fact, they have a fishing competition each year. That's what we understood from there. Anik, I think Anik, who's also part of our team, is in the meeting. He can correct me if I'm wrong. But they have a fishing competition each year, and the idea is that you catch the fish, right? Because the enjoyment is in the process of catching the fish, but you let it go again because it's part of that ecosystem and you don't want to disturb that. So, that's how it was very interesting. And so that's why we talked about this particular public space, which was actually a water body in middle of a busy city. um and so, yes, we also use these tools to teach. Again, thanks to Ritu ma'am, um, who started this project, where we document traditional water systems, and we started with Rajasthan, because Rajasthan is such a unique place in terms of the climate and the landscape, and what are the different ways that people have been traditionally using water, saving water, and how do they actually deal with it. So this first edition was in Jaipur, and we do it in collaboration with a group of filmmakers, Celia and Marilyn, where they document these same traditional water systems through film, and we do it through visual narrative. So, in fact, Mansee, it would also be great to have them, because they have also been working on these ideas a lot, but their medium of
Absolutely.
communication. Yeah. So this is the first edition we did in Amir, and I actually don't have the photo of Amir Fort. Yeah, but there's this image. So Amir Fort, if anybody has been, it's in Amir city, and it's on a contour. So it's on top of a hill, right? And there is a lake at the bottom of the fort, right? So now there's the story is that these stories were, of course, they were written by the students who were participating in the workshop, and they had a very simple question when they were visiting the site. So the question that they had was that the lake is at the bottom and the fort is at the top, and there's the rest of the city as well. How does the water go from bottom to the top, right? And it's a very simple question. Our entire investigation and entire workshop revolved around that. So it revolved around these three structures, to be particular. And the interesting thing was that the fort had been restored, and there were these audio walks as well that were going on, and the entire fort was open to public, except these three buildings, these three structures that you like. These are these step structures that you see. So there was nobody to actually help us investigate this idea. So we went, like the students went looking, and they realized that these structures are actually pulley systems for the water to come up. And the story is also around that, where there are these two architects or two conservation architects who've been called to um, conserve the fort. And so then they're asking different questions to the tourist guide, but the tourist guide is telling them everything except the question about how the water comes up to the fort. And so they see this system, they see the police system, which is open to public, but then they still wanted to investigate further. And then they understand that there is this whole system where it also involved animals, people who are, using the pulley to get water. And there are these two tanks, because one was a purification tank and the other was a storage tank. So, the same system would repeat here. And then the last structure is to actually then store the water and then pump it to the rest of the fort. And then they also understand that it's the entire system is also connected in a way where, all the forts that are there on that patch, the I think the Jaigarh Fort, the Nargarh Fort, there are different Bauris which are at a different contour. So they also understand that this entire water system is connected at a larger level as well. And so yeah, so this was the comic that we did in I think a span of 7 to 8 days, where they did this investigation, they asked questions, they visited the site, and then they came up with this comic. And the interesting thing was that when they showed it to the people who maintain the fort, the offices at the fort, they said that, now we think that it's important to actually open these three structures as well, because it people should know about this too. So I think that was a great thing that they did. The second edition we did in Udaipur this year, and this time the students had a different take. They actually used the miniature painting format, which is done in Udaipur, and then they created this long panel where they, talked about all the lakes and the water bodies and the different structures that is there around those water bodies. Um, and of course, we also use these tools to create awareness. So we did this project with Jeevit Nadi in Pune, where they wanted us to make posters. Now, I know that I said posters, they don't serve the entire purpose, but we tried, three types of posters where we could sort of also give some information. So one poster they wanted where they could actually talk to PMC about what, for them to imagine what would happen if they have a riverfront which is all concrete, which is copied from the West, versus if they try something in which they try to retain the natural landscape of the Mula and Muta River, and how that could be in the next 10 years. Um, then this poster, I think it's one of my favorites. So it talks about the current situation which is there, where where you have these soft areas around the water, it is water resilient. When you concretize it, when you create an edge, you reduce water reduction, and then because of that concretization, there is water resistance, and then there is water ruination. And then the third poster was one where it's more metaphorical and it's more artistic, and the river which is so packed from everywhere, whether it is the built edge or even the riverfront now, uh, it just wants to break free from all of this. This image is also very interesting. This is an isometric of an ideal Indian city, that we did with NIUA, National Institute of Urban Affairs in Delhi, for the World Urban Forum, which was there in Cairo, Egypt right now. And why am I showing you this is because, when we, like I said, that when we talk about cities, we talk about the built and the unbuilt environment. And one of the ideas was that how can we show a riverfront which can have elements of a public space, but at the same time can also retain the natural landscapes, wetlands, can have activities that can actually be connected to the river. For example, I can zoom in. So, for example, if you can see, there is farming that's happening over here, which we also see in places like Delhi. So many stretches of Yamuna, people actually practice farming over there. So, and if even if we need to have, these riverfronts, it can be a very small edge. It can also be accessible for people, but at the same time, it can also retain the natural landscape of a river. This was the ideas of how we can actually work with natural resources in an ideal city while still retaining the elements of an Indian city. And it was also interactive, so people could also read more about it. They could also read about, so we also included resilience, climate resilience, how can you actually retain the natural landscapes in a city, etc. uh, so yeah, this was the interactive dashboard that I had. um so before, this is the last comic that I will end my presentation with. And it's actually based on a poem by Sylvia Stultz. And it's not a comic, it's based on a poem written by her. The poem is not directly about water, but I think it beautifully conveys what we also try to do with our work. Um, so broken bottles and charred pieces of glass, wadded up newspapers tossed on the grass, pouring of concrete and tearing of your trees. This is the environment that surrounds me. Poisons and insecticides sprayed on our food, oceans filling with thick oil crude, all sea life destined to a slow, awful doom. These are the things we are to consume. Mills pumping out iron expelling yellow fumes. Airlines emitting caustic gases from fuels. Weapons of destruction tested at desolate sites. And this is the air that's to sustain life. There has to be something that someone could do, like raise the awareness to those around you. Because that if we don't heed the problem at hand, it's your life that is at stake, the destruction of man. Thank you. And
Thank
that's
you
that's
so
it.
much. Yeah,
I
thank you
hope.
so much, Shreya. Thanks a lot. It was a great presentation and profound, to be honest. And before I open the floor for question and answer, I also want to take you through a very short comic, not just one slide, but I also
Yeah.
want to highlight to you that you will see how a big fan I am yours. But often we see that often younger people are fan of some senior work and all. I want to show you very quickly the cover page of my first book, and that itself will speak what it means to be having a fan. So, what Shreya told all of you, she told this story of the Amer Fort. I just picked it up from your presentation now because I have
Mhm.
your presentation with me and also through the screen. And when she was talking about this lake, and how the students were talking, I want to show you what I did as my PhD work and how these young children can even influence people like us who have not much skills. And I feel intimidated to show that, but I'm still tempted to show because I wanted to show on your show today, just to tell you that you have a fan sitting far behind. So I'm going to show you now. So the lake which she talked about and actually did not say the name of the lake because not many people in Jaipur talk about the name of the lake. The lake is officially called Jal Mahal, but the original name of the lake is Mansagar. And I actually put a claim and also made a huge remark in my own PhD when the lake has lost its name to the beautiful little island which is humanly constructed, the 700-acre lake lost its name to
Hmm.
100 by 100-meter built structure. This is the power of
Hmm.
human beings. But anyway, I'm showing the lake in pieces to show you the full collage because I wanted to make a narrative how the value of lake changed over time. So this is the lake where we used to revere it, the lake as you see, Om, Surya Nama, Shanti, blah, blah, blah. So the spiritual connection with the water body, then the wood and the forest was there. You know that there is a huge forest. We have Amer forest and Nahargarh forest there. Then Britishers and Mughals brought the idea of lake as an aesthetic component where we have to beautify the lake. That's what I'm showing. Then came industrialization and urbanization when we started to misuse the lake. And then we are at a stage at this moment in time when we all talk about abusing the lake also because we are exploiting. So this is also something I try to try my hands, but I don't get that much time, and I also am not confident as sketching a person. But I really wanted to show you that this sketch itself is inspired by your work, and it's cover page of my first book, by the way. And I did it in 14 hours because I spent like almost 3 years going to Jaipur every year for my field work. So I'm going to stop
Hmm.
here. So many thanks to you, Shreya, for this wonderful talk. And maybe we open the floor for any question or any comments people want to make, and so that we can make it more inclusive conversation as well. And wonderful work, and most important for me that it's not only a simple comic, there's a story behind it, there's a deep research that goes behind it, and there are some strong messages that has to come across to the society. And I can completely understand it because I'm rarely making these sketches, and I'm really not getting much time to make it my main profession. It still remains one of my hobbies to sketch, and I do a lot of these sketches, and I feel like someday I'm going to make a lot of sketches. But when I look at people like you, people are doing great work, and I know how deep research it requires.
So, so inspiring. I mean, the fact that you did that first of all in 14 hours, I'm a little, I'm questioning my,
It's a A2.
my,
It's a A2.
I can see the scale and I can see the details, that you've made, and it's beautiful, and it's all by hand, right? I mean,
Yes,
it's on pen and paper.
and
Yeah, so
yes. So
we have all these, things that assist us. We
yeah,
have all
this
these
is
iPads and
2013, by the way. And before that, I had already spent 3 years going to Jaipur for my field work, perception survey, and all. And I was later
yeah.
involved in Jaipur for a lot of official work as well for the Mansagar Lake. So, as you were already talking about, that architects are always fascinated and their focus is on built environment. When you were actually explaining that project, I was like just waiting. Will that name of the lake come out of you? Will the name of the lake come out of you?
करेगा क्या है तो मैं कंप्लीट
Go ahead.
ये मतलब
So, okay, there is some disturb here, disturbance. Yes. Okay. So, I would like to understand from you now. I know you people are very strong educators also, and this is a strong tool. So, when you are doing these workshops, how are students picking it up as a medium to make it a profession? How is the reception
Yeah.
by the students? Because I know when people like us who are teaching science, the
Hmm.
reception is quite low and slow because it looks quite a difficult task to write papers about it. I have quite a number of papers on Mansagar Lake. I want to understand from you how it is when they, first of all, I'm sure they get intimidated or they get overwhelmed. But do they really see it
Yeah.
as an option for profession?
I mean, I'll answer it in both ways. So for workshops, first of all, I mean they do. There are two ideas. One is that they get intimidated because they think that, oh, it is all about sketching and I don't know how to sketch.
Yes,
And there's a group then who thinks that, oh, it's all about sketching. So it's those two people, and both of them are wrong, because
yes.
sketching is literally, I would say, 10% of the whole process.
Absolutely. It's a deep research I'm seeing the way you
Yeah.
were narrating.
Yeah. So and so they don't realize that, because of course, it's a huge process and they've not been through it. But when they do the workshop and they take each day and then they understand, and it's like, for example, even with the Amir workshop, um, they were not able to sort of investigate. It was almost like a detective case that they had to solve, and once they cracked it, then they already had a story to tell, because they went through this entire sort of experience of understanding, actually, where does the water come from. So um they do get intimidated in the beginning, even when they're doing it for a workshop. But slowly, when they understand, and when then they understand the process, they become comfortable, and they realize that, oh, it is actually very similar to what they do in architecture schools as well, right? Because you just don't directly jump to designing a project. You do all of these steps and you do all of these processes to
Yes,
reach that answer. And it's the same thing here. It's just that the communication medium is different. When it comes to profession, mm, again, I would say, so the thing is that our work or our practice is not, people think that we've moved away from architecture. It's actually not the case. I mean, I would say that it's a different type of an architecture practice
yes,
that we do. So people often come, students or even architects, they think that it is to steer away from architecture, or they can do something other than architecture. But in fact, it is a way to communicate architecture differently.
yes,
So when they come, I mean, there are a lot of people who have worked with us, and who have now gone into different professions as well. uh, but people who actually, they're still in two minds, that I love architecture but I don't want to practice building something. They work with us, and then they realize that, okay, there are different ways to pursue architecture, but not just by building it, right? So
yes,
I think, yeah, I mean that those are the kind of things that happen
yeah.
around in us. Yeah.
I want to pick a story from Puran Dhaka because again I was fascinated with the lake which you showed because I was there last year as Action Aid
Mm.
guest and evaluating some projects and also presenting myself. And I did manage to go and see the lake with the team there later on after the conference and all in the fieldwork. And the kind of stories which I was getting that how people passionately
Yeah.
engage and own that as a community. And when you were showing the lake also in Maharashtra without telling the name, which is for good because tourists have become a huge nuisance in this country, and
Yeah.
how
Uh,
people take pride and do take care of these. Do you think these kind of mediums which you people are using can be a very strong power, tool for those vulnerable communities, for this vulnerable resource, to become a voice?
mm,
Like that very simple example, that Hathi Gaon. I really loved it because elephant is my favorite animal.
mhm.
And I know this project, and I have never had a chance to go and visit. But the beautiful elephants in your story there, I mean, in your comic there, has a profound meaning. I mean, the way you are trying to put it up as a story, that why to design for animals and is there a need to design for animals? That's so fascinating. And we do have some very good ecologists or landscape architects who have taken that route. So again, it's a
Yes.
different route than a route which many people take. Likewise, your route is also very different route. I
Yeah.
don't see any deviation from architecture and urban design and planning in what you are doing. Probably that's why I have been following you guys for a long, long time. And I must thank actually that to both you and Ritu that you have managed to really do a lot of collaborative work in this wonderful way and bringing out water stories out of it. When you do this kind of work with architects and all, and you have also done with, and I had seen this poster by the way from UN Habitat
Yeah.
thing. I mean, I'm full of questions to be honest, but we will be running out of time. And I see Zenat has posed a
Yes.
question here. Maybe you can pick it up, or maybe Zenat, you would like to unmute yourself because we appreciate our participants to really engage with our speakers. I can go on and
Hi,
on talking to
Mansee,
you.
and hi.
Hi, Zenat. Go
Yeah,
ahead.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for this very fascinating talk. I've been listening to it on the link, and then I decided I'll join the Zoom because I wanted to ask this question.
Go
But
ahead.
I just wanted to check, in the course of um, uh, developing your stories into comic books, uh, how have you engaged with the community? Do the local communities or people participate in the process? Do they also sketch with you and
Mhm.
learn with you? And if not, is what do you see as a potential and what do you see as a challenge
Right.
if this medium was to be used as a part of a process of ecological conservation, water conservation in urban areas, etc.?
Right. Right.
Before you start answering, Shreya, I mean, I don't know whether Zeenat and Shreya, you know each other. Do you know each other?
No, no, no.
Okay, so
No,
I would
no.
like to introduce Zeenat
And
then. Zeenat is also our ex-speaker and also leading development alternatives and also my ex-student that way. So, yes, so I see
Student. Yes.
yeah, so that way development alternatives is doing lot of work on community engagement. I see a potential collaboration which can happen, Zeenat, the way you have been
Yeah.
working at the DA. So go ahead, Shreya, go ahead.
yes. So I mean, I'll answer that question in parts. So first of all, when it comes to workshops, I mean it comes from students themselves where they say that, hey, why don't we translate this, because we write in English, like the workshops we and then we're like, why don't we translate this in local language because nobody is going to understand this in English, then there's no point of it. Um and so then we're like, yeah, but then we don't know the language, like for example, in Amir, I think they translated it in Hindi and then they translated it in Hadoti. So they gave one, book, which was in Hadoti, I think, because they realized that the people who were working in the fort were speaking Hadoti. So they gave them a, Hadoti book, and then they presented both the Hindi and English version of it. So in workshop we do that. We try to do it everywhere we go. We even in Dhaka we translated it in Bengali. Of course, there are some mistakes that happen in translation, but then we try to do that so that when common people come and interact with it, because when we exhibit our comic, it's literally the comic is speaking for itself. We don't have to
Yes.
stand there, tell what it says. So it's important that the language and visuals are as accessible as they can be, right? So that is one way. And second is that even with the Navi Mumbai book that we did with Professor Ritu Deshmukh and Sara Ahmed uh, from Living Waters, they also made it a point that the copies were printed and distributed in schools. I did not include that photo in my presentation, but it's very nice photo where they're distributing it in Zilla Parishad schools, and the government is taking that initiative. Um, when it comes to comics, I would say that it is still picking up, at least
Mm.
at least in India, because we do face challenges when it comes to convincing somebody that this medium can be a way to talk about anything that you want to talk about. And it it it's a good medium because it's visual. The language can be, it can be without dialogues. Even it does not even have to have dialogues. It can just be a series of images. But then it it still is a little difficult, I would say. That is the challenge I think that we are facing, and we've been working on it. I mean, each day that we do something, we work with the idea that it goes beyond the community of designers and architects and everybody who follows our work, and it goes beyond and it reaches the masses. And I mean, and then we hear from people, like for example, the posters that we did with Jeevit Nadi. A friend of ours told in Pune that, I saw that poster stuck somewhere in the city. So then we directly don't realize that, okay, our work has gone somewhere, but then, there are these incidents or small things that people tell us, where we understand that, okay, thank God that it's gone beyond our community. Because sometimes we do fear that, it still stays within a certain radius of people. And yeah, I mean now even governments, and we worked with the Chennai government, with Varanasi government as well, and we've been working with the National Institute of Urban Affairs, where they're slowly understanding that yes, this medium can also be used to talk about all of these topics.
Yeah, I am actually, if I can take another minute, Mansee, I'm coming from 3 or 4 sort of different directions. One is some experiments that we've done in the enterprise development space, where we use comics as a co-creation media to understand the aspirations and history, the cultural historical sort of baggage that a potential entrepreneur is carrying, and therefore where that, and it's normally women that we are working with here, and where they want to go. So it's like a learning, it's about them talking about their dreams through sketching out comics. So that's one thing where we found that it's a very powerful listening medium. You can actually do that to enable people to bring out what they want. The second space that I'm coming from is experiences that I have seen of my own son and Piyush Siskaria. Mansee, you know him pretty well, I suppose, who have been, and my son has been part of these urban sketching groups. So there are a lot of these urban sketching groups across the world where, weekends they go out and they get together and they sketch. And I find that probably educating urbanites on their on the relationship that they're losing with nature, this is one space that could be used. And the third place that I'm coming from, which is where I think, Mansee, thank you for the connecting, that this is a possible engagement. We are working in the peri-urban areas of NCR in Greater Noida, where where we are looking at peri-urban pond rejuvenation with communities. And these areas are they're pretty challenging in the sense that you have communities who are, many of them are migrants. They're coming in for work and have no relationship with what was the natural system that existed there. And many others, who sort of sold off their lands and now living there just with, become bolero drivers, if you may say so. And so the water bodies are a backyard to their system.
Yeah.
And the water body is a space where to dump. It is not a space where they associate, which they would have whenever it was a village. Right. So the relationship is very different at the moment in that space.
Right.
And so the challenge now is, could we build a better sense of engagement and renewed sense of engagement through activities, designed activities such as these with the water body? And that becomes an education process, but it also becomes a process of building a story around the water. I don't know. I mean, despite being trained as an architect, I don't think very confident about sketching. So I don't know how people who don't sketch, feel when they're given a piece of paper.
And again, now thanks to Ritu ma'am. So we also conducted this activity in Navi Mumbai. I think it was part of the Navi Mumbai City Festival or Design Festival or something like that, where we just did this experiment in a public space. We had put up a stall and we had this different cards with, a public space or a garden, a chalk. And these are all related to Kharghar because that is where we were doing the workshop. And we said, you take these cards and you build a story around it. Because like you said that, sometimes sketching is something that intimidates them. But actually sketching is not at all, I mean, you can sketch anything. You can sketch a stick figure and, that will tell your story. But it can be intimidating. So that's where we had these cards already illustrated. And they could literally choose the cards and they could maybe simply write dialogues, or they could also be their own character, if they were. So that's where it happened that, in the beginning they're a little, intimidated, but then they take their cards and then they start telling their story that, okay, I walk from this public space to this public space to reach the station, for example, like somebody was talking about last mile connect. I have to say it like that. And then because they start feeling confident, then they also start sketching.
Sketching.
You
I
know,
Yes,
think
then
that's wonderful.
absolutely. Yeah, I
yeah,
have
then they
also
making
experienced
their
this.
own character, etc. So, we also understand that, because we've been doing workshops like since forever now. So we also understand what are the kind of inhibitions that come. And definitely when it comes with architecture students or design students who already know how to sketch, it is definitely going to be your roadblock, when you're
Yeah,
doing it with a person who doesn't know how to sketch. And so the idea of the workshop is not to sketch or not to make a beautiful picture. It is for helping them tell their story, and then us creating that medium and giving them that, allowing them that, space to tell that story. And of course, when, if it's a longer workshop, because I mean, the example
yes,
that I gave was just a very quick interaction in a public space. But when it's a workshop, we can, design it, we can also gamify it. So we've also done workshops where we already have cards designed, and they can tell their stories about their communities and the public spaces, the problems that are there with public spaces, etc.
Oh,
So yeah, I mean,
fascinating.
yeah, but
Fascinating.
I personally feel that this is the strongest medium if we really want to convey anything about water. Because as Shreya rightly mentioned, you don't need language. You don't need a person to explain what it is trying to convey. It is just that and it is not necessary that everybody has to have a good sketching skill. Even if I mean, I recall from my own master's thesis, Shreya, just urban design thesis, 1997, 1998, 1999. And I did make people do mind mapping of the lake which I was studying. What is their,
yeah,
what is their idea of the lake?
yeah,
And then they will try to
yeah,
make this big lake as circle, and they will, no, 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 the lake is not circular, the lake is thoda tedha here. And then they will try to make themselves, so the person becomes bigger than the lake. And this
yeah,
whole process the villagers were really enjoying, when I was doing this mind mapping. But then you, as a
yeah,
researcher, you also get a feel that what are they drawing. My idea was to see where do they place lake in their heart. That was my idea
yeah,
during the research. So are they drawing the
yeah,
lake first, or the hill first, or the tree first, or the temple, or them themselves? That is what I was trying to capture. So I think, if we can use this tool, it is, personally, to me, it is the strongest tool to bring a change, behavioral change in the society. But we have to see how we can use it. And as people like Shreya are there. And by the way, I want to also share with you, Shreya, we also had Arijit Sains, are one of the first
yes, yes,
comics artist
yep,
from the country. We had him in the very first year of Wednesdays for Water on River of Stories. That time the book was not in print, and after 6 months, we
we-
heard that the book was republished and it was on Narmada, story. And so we were so thrilled
yes,
that Arijit Das book got reprinted, and it is again in the market, by the way. We were super excited.
yeah,
So when I look at life of Arijit Da, when he started, when he was one of the only comic artists in the country, and when I see people like you, it really gives me a lot of hope that this tool, I will use the word tool, or this medium of expression, can really become one of the strongest medium to bring a change. Because no matter how many, it's not to demean the science behind it, because you are also doing deep science to bring it in a different way.
mhm,
I feel it is extremely important that this medium is also explored by the government, by the policy, by the corporates, by the NGO sector, to really, because they are the ones who, especially NGO sector, who are the ones who are working to bring a behavioral change. But we have to call it off here today, because we can go on and on talking with Shreya and the whole Leave Artist team, for that matter. And I still wanted to talk about Kinder Dike, because we used to cycle there every weekend or
Hi.
fortnight from Rotterdam. I lived there for 7 years.
Yeah,
So Kinder Dike for
yes,
us was like, my backyard. So cycling to Kinder Dike,
yeah,
taking our tiffin in the cycle and just going and eating there was like a very regular thing. So it's very close to my
yes, yes,
heart too. But
yeah, yeah,
in the paucity of time, we have to call it off for the day. And thank you so much, Shreya, and also the entire Leave Artist team. I will definitely try that we have more and more, work, like we can do collaboration. And I will also hope that you are also going to connect us with more filmmakers, more artists, as we have been always telling our speakers to bring us more speakers. This is where we are
Yes.
bringing a melting point kind of situation, making us one of the longest water conversation in the world. And if we all can come together, I'm sure we can also bring up change in the way we would like to see water is conserved and managed by the society, for the society, and of the society. And with this, I think I also want to convey New Year greetings and Christmas greetings to all of my speakers, my participants who have been there. We must have touched more than 6,000 people in this journey of more than 300 speech sessions. And also to all our core team members without whom this series would not have been possible so far. We are closing this year with this wonderful session with Leewardists, and we are starting the new year with a big bang. Let me tell you that as well. And the big bang is also coming on Friday Waters session Meet a Maestro on January 3rd at 5 p.m. IST. Do join us to discuss mythology of water since Harappan times with Devdutt Patnaik sir, no other than Devdutt Patnaik sir. And to get more information on what we are going to do next year, please follow us on www.w4w.in for more details. I also want to announce before I close that the Water Fest is round the corner. We have already finalized the date now. Yesterday we finalized it, 31st of January and 1st of February. And the big surprise is that we are going to Mahakumbh to have a Jal Akhada there. So we are really nervous about it, but we do hope that we are going to have a wonderful water festival there to touch more lives and talk about water. As I said, at W4W, for us, the bottom line is water conversation is extremely important for water conservation. We stand by those lines, and we would like to see that all our speakers also really like this line and also keep us helping to do these conversations. Thank you so much, Shreya, and thanks all the participants for this session. Thank you.
Thank you so much, and Happy New Year, everyone.
Happy
Thank
New
you.
Year to all of you.
Happy New
Bye-bye.
Year.